And so if this hadn't happened, I probably, I might have got the idea for this series anyway, but it certainly did stimulate me to get this idea. A lot of people have already heard the story of when Centerpoint was a year old, and we'd had a whopping $12,000 in sales the first year. Mm-hmm. Someone sued me for $1 million, claiming that I had stolen their technology and stolen this and stolen that, and it was a frivolous lawsuit. But I was making $3,000 a month at the time and was pretty green, had no idea how to deal with this. I was waking up in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat because I thought I was going to lose my house and the few things that I did have. And I asked my attorney, how much is this going to cost? And he said, well, it could ultimately cost about $150,000 in legal fees if it goes all the way. You'll find out why they say don't make a federal lawsuit out of it. And so I said to myself, my business partner said, well, Centerpoint isn't worth anywhere near spending that kind of money on defending. So I said to myself, well, what would it look like if it was worth spending $150,000 to defend? And I started mapping out in my head, what it would look like. And today it looks like that.
Oh, fascinating.
And if I had not been sued, which just like the person being told they have cancer when it happened, it was a huge disaster to me. Mm-hmm. But when I look back on it, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I would not have Centerpoint. I would not be, a personal growth teacher. I wouldn't be doing all the things I'm doing. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Amazing.
So, like you say, if you're going to look back on something at some point and think, strange sort of way, that was a good thing that happened, why not start thinking that right immediately and skip all the part where you feel bad?
I'm laughing because it's such a refreshing concept. I'm sure for a lot of people it's a head-blowing concept. We've never considered it before. But this is available to all of us, to you, to me, to everybody listening. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and give another example. It was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was on a flight from Denver to Las Vegas, I had an asthma attack, which is not pleasant to have anywhere because you're basically drowning while still in the environment.
I remember that.
You can't get your air. And I was on a plane. You can't ask them to pull over, roll down a window. I mean, there's none of that kind of stuff available. Well, even though that was terrifying, and I ended up going to the emergency room, which I had never gone to before. I've always been healthy, always been solid, stable, bullish, never any kind of problems, never been to the hospital. Ended up doing all of that. And all of that looked pretty horrible. In fact, we were going to Vegas for a week-long vacation, and it began with this experience. So that week-long vacation was mostly one of worry and concern and fretting about my future and my health and all of that. Well, at the same time, it was that very event that was the turning point in causing me to look at losing weight and getting fit, ultimately for the first time in my life. I'm now 51 years old. I have lost over 70 pounds. I have been in 3 fitness contests. I'm in my 4th one right now. I have built my own gym that has more in it than a lot of health clubs here. I've hired a personal trainer. I've gone out and worked out with Frank Zane, Mr. Olympia. He's won it like 3 times, a famous legend in the bodybuilding business. And 2 years before all of this, if you had said, Joe, you're going to build your own gym, you're going to become a bodybuilder, you're going to lose some weight, you're going to go work out with Frank Zane, I would have said, what? What planet are you from? That's not Joe Vitale. He doesn't do stuff like that. Well, it's Joe Vitale now, and Joe does do stuff like that, and it all was triggered by something that stops other people. It was triggered by something that in the moment looked like a horrifying, hellish experience, and on some ways it was. But I was able to turn it into something good, and I can, of course, look back on it and say, yeah, I see how that was useful. So what I'm saying, and you're reiterating here, is that we can look at these possibly negative momentary experiences and say, okay, we don't like this experience. How can it be turned into something good? What's the lesson in it? What can evolve from it? All of it is useful.
Well, it's we've never talked about this before, and it's interesting that you're reiterating pretty much exactly what I have found to be true about this. And now that I think about it, when I think of other very successful people I know, like Jack Canfield, for instance, everyone I know that is successful in the way that you are and that I am and Jack is, thinks this way. And that should be a big clue to people who are struggling. That, in fact, one of the things that I often say is, For any outcome you want, there is a certain way of thinking and acting that will get it for you. Your job is to find out what it is, and we're telling what it is right now, so that part is handled, and then be flexible enough to adopt it. And I find that the flexibility part is where most people have trouble. Most all of the quote-unquote secrets of life are not secrets anymore. There's very little that is esoteric anymore in this age. But where people get in trouble is that they are not flexible enough to change the way they think and act in order to align it with what really works.
Yeah.
Another thing that you mentioned in passing, I just want to reiterate and maybe get your thoughts on, is this idea that I'm going to put it kind of in my own words. People think that they're not good at manifesting things. I hear this all the time from the students that I have. Well, I'm just no good at manifesting things. And I tell them, you're actually an expert at manifesting things. You're magically good at manifesting things. Because whatever you focus on manifests. Your problem isn't that you can't manifest things. It's that you aren't conscious about what you focus on. Your focuser is running on autopilot, and it's focusing on a lot of things that you don't want without you intending that necessarily, and because of that, it's creating a lot that you don't want in your life. So if you want something in life, you've got to consciously and intentionally get control of your focusing and focus on it.
Absolutely, and well said. In fact, that's what's been the turning point for me to lose weight, is I could unconsciously go through life and put on weight and look out into the world and say that it's because of my genes, it's because of how I was brought up, it's because of DNA, habits, psychological upbringing. I kept pointing the finger elsewhere. It wasn't until I really took control of the unconscious process that was going on, made it conscious, and then took new steps to make a new habit out of this and to take on the mindset, if you will, or the beliefs or the programming of somebody who is fit and trim and slim, that I began to make those changes. And I want people to realize that, when they listen to somebody like you or they listen to somebody like me, they might say to themselves, yeah, it's working for you guys. You guys have mastered the process. First thing I want to say is I have not mastered the process. I feel like I've woken up in first grade and I'm just learning how to use this process. And the second thing I want to say is I was homeless at one point, 30-some years ago in Dallas. I slept on the steps of the post office waiting for checks that I hoped would arrive so I can eat. And when I moved to migrated to Houston when that was a boomtown back in the late 70s, I took all kind of jobs and lived in poverty. I was a reporter, a truck driver, a taxi cab driver, a laborer. I was in this poverty mindset, this low self-esteem. I was really, in my opinion, working at making a difference in my life. I did want to be an author. I did want to pursue writing. I did have that as a calling that was coming from my heart. But I was bouncing against this unconscious belief system that was not allowing me to get the results I wanted. So I had to get into reading all of the books, the Think and Grow Rich and The Magic Power, The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol, and doing a lot of seminars and working with a coach and slowly making all of that was unconscious conscious. So I could make new decisions. I had to let go of all the programming. And I'm trying to say this in a way so that people who are listening who may be struggling, not that anybody may be homeless, though somebody listening might be, and I want them to realize that, wow, Joe came from there. Joe came from the streets. And now I live a luxurious lifestyle. I mean, I just sold my second house. I have a country estate out here, which you've flown down to and stayed at. I just bought another car, which was a luxury item. I just bought a luxury sports car, a BMW 645 Ci, that was made for me in Germany. And when I stop and realize, Joe, you were the guy who was sleeping on the steps in Dallas, starving, hoping to get some work, hoping to get some money, hoping to make a difference. And now today, 30-some years later, BMW, one of the finest car artists in the world, just made a car for you in Germany that was shipped to you. It fries my brain because I am so different. How did I become different? It's changing from the inside out. It's all the stuff you've been talking about.
Well, and I think you're making the same point that I often make, which is that literally anyone can do this.
Yes,
This is not, very often I know people look at me and they think, well, yeah, it's okay for you, Bill. I mean, you've got a lot of money and you've got a big company and so on and so forth.